welcome to our Build Our Africa session. Welcome back, I would say. It's so great to see everyone of you over here. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we host this session every couple of weeks on a Tuesday night where we invite a leading tech founder across the African continent to come and share their journey, their story, and where they have been with us. So today's session, we are so privileged to have our speaker, who I'll introduce in a couple of seconds here shortly. But before I get started, just want to also thank everybody. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time today, please stay tuned on the Build Africa series. Basically, different founders from across the continent. Feel free to recommend founders, give us feedback on what we could do to make this session better, but it only gets built by your feedback. That being said, it is an absolute pleasure and an honor to welcome Tayo, the founder and group CEO of Paga. Tayo, please welcome. Great to see you over here. So let me introduce Tayo really quickly and what he does at Paga. Awesome. Paga is a mobile payments company building an ecosystem to enable people to send money digitally. Primarily, they started in Nigeria, and they're the leading mobile money service in Nigeria, which is its first market. Before Paga, Tayo was the vice president at Travant Capital, a private equity fund in West Africa. And prior to joining that, he was also manager of corporate development at Cisco Systems in San Jose, California. Tayo has been recognized by many different awards, magazines, and things across the continent as well as across the world. We also went to the same grad school together. Well, not at the same time. You know, we're almost the same age, if you can't tell here on the video. But yeah,
on the younger side, my
friend. Tayo, thank you so much for making it out here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to have you on.
No, Benjamin, it's a real pleasure, and I really appreciate you asking me to come on. And thanks to everyone who's listening in, the Clubhouse family and the folks on the webinar. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. So let's get started. And those of you who are tuning in here, feel free to drop your questions in on the chat here on Zoom. We'd love to get as many questions as you want out to Tayo, as well as join on Twitter. If you're tuning in from Clubhouse, we'll pull questions from Twitter as well that you can ask. We'll be here with Tayo for the next hour. Cool. Well, Tayo, let's start at the beginning. Let's start about this journey where you know, you were going to school in the States, and then you started working, and then you went to grad school. And I want to talk about the journey from grad school, because a lot of our audience are people who are tuning in from around the world, a lot of diaspora people who are interested in coming back to the continent and looking at doing different things. But right after grad school, you decided to go into working for a couple of years. Can you talk to us about that process and that journey into like, okay, how did you always know you wanted to come back home? Like, how do you decide on like going to work, and how long do you work? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I mean, I actually, when I first went to the US, I thought I would go right back home after undergrad. And then I got to a place where I thought I will never go back home. But when I was in business school, I started thinking strongly about going back again. And this was in 2004, right? 2003, 2004. And everyone I spoke to in Nigeria, I came to visit, and everyone I spoke to said, don't come back yet. Nigeria was still very much about who you knew and not what you knew. So build your skills, your capabilities in the US, your experience, and then come back. So I took that to heart and started thinking about what I would love to do with my life, right? Like, you know, what matters. And I actually concluded that what matters for me is that I really love two things. One is to help bring ideas to life, and two is to be trusted advisor to people, right? And those were the things with consulting. So I was a consultant before business school. And I, through a process of talking to a lot of different people, decided that the way I will do that in my life is by being a venture capitalist. So I now was like, okay, how do I go from tech consulting to venture capital? And that is what led me to the idea of working with a corporate that had a very active venture capital arm. And that's what led me to Cisco Systems. You know, and, you know, it's funny, I was talking to my chief of staff and she didn't really, you know, change Cisco Systems. She didn't even know what they did. And I'm like, back then was the Facebook, right? Like Cisco was the big tech Goliath you would love to work with. You know, today it's no more the sexy Goliath it was back. So, you know, but I had a great experience with Cisco, spent 3 years at Cisco. and really just build my skills as an investor, partnering with various operators. But one thing that then kept ringing to me was because I represented Cisco on a couple boards, was that on the boards I served on, I thought the people who added the most value to the board were actually people who have been operators or who are currently operators. And I mean, a lot of the problems the CEOs would face and they'll bring up, to me, they were very theoretic in my answers and my responses, etc. And I thought, wow, if I actually operated a business, I'd be able to better relate with these questions, right? And so one of the things that became clear to me was that on this journey of being a venture capitalist, I wanted to take a break at some point to start a business, right? So that was at some point. Like, okay, I want to start a business, operate a business, and then come back again, right? Like, and so, but anyways, and that journey was, you know, when I started with Cisco, I eventually 3 years later was talking to I think a mutual friend of ours, Fred Swanica, and you know, Fred always inspires, and he said, you know, Tayo, you know, Nigeria reminded him of where India, China were 15 years ago. Right. And he says, think of the people who went back to India 15 years ago, and you will be thinking about the likes of Tata, Infosys, ArcelorMittal. These names are no longer just Indian conglomerates. These are global names, right? That had so much impact. So it's like, you know, you could stay in the US, start a business in the US as you're thinking, or come back to Nigeria, start a business in Nigeria, have impact in Nigeria, right? Beyond the kind of impact you could have in the US. So that really was what got me started thinking about coming back to the continent.
I love that, you know, because you know what's so amazing is Fred Swanica was the same conversation that I had with him during business school. And that was what inspired me to move back home. You know, for me, he just looked at me and he said, so what are you waiting for? And I said, oh, I don't have enough money. He says, okay, how much do you need? And I was like, he said, I was just giving lame excuses. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh man. He's like, well, if you have all these excuses, it means you don't believe in what you want to work on. Yeah. And I was like, man, this guy. So it's really, really cool that it was also a very similar conversation that you had. But I want to talk a little bit more about that, Tayo. I know you make it seem like, okay, yes, you did this and then decided to move back home. I'm sure that journey wasn't easy. One, probably on the family side, your family was probably looking at you like, why would you leave America, and especially Cisco at that time, to move back to this venture capital firm investing in West Africa? And, you know, how did that conversation go about? Because there's so many people in the audience right now who are in similar situations. There's people who always tell us like, hey, I'm at KPMG. I've been here for 6 years in London. I want to move back home. I don't know when to move. Everybody tells me, move back when you're ready, move back. How do you like de-risk that whole journey of moving back home? Like, what did you do to make that happen?
Yeah, and I think the times have changed a little bit on this, but I'll just share sort of my experience. I mean, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of different friends about their experience working on the continent, what it will cost, etc. I remember, I will never forget having, you know, down on University Avenue, having dinner with Yemi Lalude, who you might know at TPG. And he said, Tayo, it's going to cost you $100,000 to land in Nigeria, right? To move everything back, pay for 2 years rent, buy a car, you have to ship a car, pay cash, right? Like all of it just put together is going to cost you $100,000. Are you sure you want to do that? How are you going to do that, right? So I think for me, it then became a journey of like, okay, whoever I'm coming back with would need to move me, right? And I say things have changed because then companies were moving people back. Now, not so much, right? Now you actually have to think about, I mean, I was talking to an entrepreneur this week who started an amazing business, and she was like, you know, I had to move back home, right? But you know, she started an amazing business. So you have to do what you have to do. So you have to be willing to take these kinds of sacrifices. And so, but still, it was a difficult decision, right? On multiple levels, right? Because I think it's a very big decision to move back home to Africa. I don't think it should be taken lightly. And I think everybody has a different way to think about it. I actually don't think it's for everybody as well. And so I think you have to be very clear on your opportunity cost, however you view your value of your time and however you value that, and really make sure that you're making the decision for the long term and for the right reasons. And I say this because you can have impact in Africa without being in Africa, right? As you know, there are people like Ime Achibong at Facebook, who are having tremendous impact on the continent, but living in Silicon Valley, right? And he comes into town, is really helping to drive Facebook across the continent and doing some great things. And there's a number of examples I could give of people like that. So there are different ways to have impact without necessarily living on the continent. But for me, it was a tough one. I decided actually that I was not going to leave anything in the US, because I felt if I had a place in the US, or if I still had my stuff somewhere, that it would be, I have a US passport, I could easily just make the decision to go back. And trust me, I've had the moment, which I shared a bit of in October, when I had police brutality against me in Nigeria, that I literally was like, I'm moving back that weekend, right? If not for Paga, I would not. So I think there are those kinds of moments that you have to be ready for as well. So I think that was a very tough decision. My mom was happy, actually, right, in my case, because she, she didn't expect me to be the one to move back of all my brothers. From the family perspective, there was not an issue there. It was actually more, everybody was shocked, right? Because I had firmly been clear that I was not going to move back to Nigeria before, right?
Let's talk about that. So all of a sudden, people may assume, okay, Tayo moved back, and all of a sudden he's got these amazing ideas, and Paga just came about like that. No hard times, amazing. Got funded, got everything he needed. Regulators loves him and everything like that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about moving back home. The first couple of months, you fly back to Nigeria. I'm guessing Lagos is where you flew back to. And let's talk about that. So what was the first things you did when you moved back home? Because you've now built one of the largest, if not the largest, mobile money player in Nigeria, which is a massive market, right? And being able to do that is not easy. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. There's a lot of background work that you have to put in the hours for. And it doesn't come overnight. It's not overnight success. Can we talk about that? And what did you do the first couple of months? How did you go idea finding? Did you opened this special book and you got all these ideas of how to figure this all out? Or was there a mentor that helped you? Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, no, definitely not an easy journey at all. Lots of ups and downs and twists and turns. And the journey continues to be told. It's not over yet. As I said to someone this week, I said it could still fail, right? Like, it's not over. I don't believe it will fail, but it could still fail. Look, I think for me, one of the big things that I was concerned about when I first moved back was, because I did not go to university in Nigeria, I was worried that I didn't have a network. And I knew Nigeria was still a place where your network matters. So that concerned me. But I think as I got back, I just started making friends. And I think this in my life has just generally worked for me, is like, rather than meet people for who they are or what they can do for you, just make friends, right? You never know who's who. I treat everybody the same. I'm not looking for anything from you, we're just friends. And that's real and that's genuine for me, right? And I think that ended up really helping me, right? Because I joined this private equity firm, and I remember my mentor in the US before I moved back, my very last meeting with him, he said, Tayo, you have gone back, you've met this company, you've met the people from the company, you've done your research on them, but you know what? It may not work out, right? And then he paused and said, if it doesn't work out, what would you do? And in my head, I was about to say, oh, I'll come back to the US. And then he immediately said, you start a company. I was like, oh, yeah, start a company. And you know what? That's exactly what happened, right? 6 months in, actually 3 months in, I was like, this sucks, right? This experience at this company sucks. And it only got worse. And January of 2009, I walked in and I gave my, first day as I arrived back, I gave my notice. I had spent the whole of December really struggling with this decision. And then my friend, Chinezi Chijioke, and I were debating this thing. And he was like, Tayo, you're not happy there. So why stay? You could afford to be without a job for a few months with your savings and think of something else to do. And that's how I got started, right? So I had Chinezi, my friend Chris Bradford, my friend Kolamasha, three of them helped me, thinking through different ideas. So I quit the job. I got a consulting gig for 2 days a week. And then I just got going, looking at a variety of ideas, right? I started with a members only club, which I actually spent quite a lot of money on, and ended up axing that idea. Again, Fred helped me in axing that idea, actually. Fred was like, that's not a first to market game, it's the best to market game. And then one day I just had an epiphany about this idea. And actually, before I even got to this one, I would meet with not only the three guys, but there are also some other people who I had met in my journey that I will speak with and get ideas from, right? So folks like Ngozi Edozian, who I had met in my journey, we'd worked for the same consulting firm. Andrew Ali, who was my boss actually in the private equity firm, and just sort of pick their brain, tiny platform, like just people like just pick the brain, etc. And so they all knew I was looking for which idea to work on. And one of the things that I did was, even during that period, I was very diligent about going into an office every morning, right? And I worked 8 to 5 at least, and really just evaluating all the different ideas. And then one day I had an epiphany about what is now Paga. And for me, the frustration was I was carrying cash everywhere with me. I was like, why do I have to carry cash everywhere? We could pay digitally. Why can we not make payments digitally, right? And then I realized that the problem was worse for most people. But that was my big aha moment. And the real epiphany I had about it was, how do we get the masses into a digital platform? And that's what led me to the idea of the agent network, which we'll talk about. But that's what led me to that idea. And so I got super excited, called everyone, and everybody was like, wow, this is it. This is a big idea, right? And my number one test was, I wanted whatever I did to pass what I called the big idea test, which was very simply, no one's going to ask me for the market size. And you know what? In 12 years, no one is ever asking for the market size, because you just get it, right? Like, this is a big opportunity. And even now, 9 years of operating this business, there's still a big market. And so we've done a lot of work, but there's still a lot of road ahead of us. That's where I got started and got going. But the twists and turns from there are something else, right? To tell you the truth. Yeah.
So you talk about this idea of mentorship, right? So essentially you had people in your life that you'd looked up to, and you would ask for feedback for like, hey, what do you think about this? And so that's a powerful lesson for a lot of us to take care of. How do you currently interact with your mentors? Are you still calling up Fred Swanica? Are you still calling up other people like him or her? Who like, what does that look like? And did you ask for those relationships, or they just over time with repetitive calls, they just become an indirect mentor to you? Let's talk about that. Do you have any advice for people looking for mentorship as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've only had one person who I would say I formally asked, can you be my mentor? Like, ask that question. But I, of course, as I just shared, have a lot of people who provided me mentorship and continue to, and who I look up to, and I actually reach out to them when I want to test ideas, etc., get their feedback. But I think the first thing I say to people is, you can't do it out of the blue. So it's got to be someone who in some level of interest in you, and then you built a rapport with the person, right? And so I think that's sort of how it's worked over time for me. In some cases, they're friends. We built a friendship first, and then I say, no, look, I actually have a professional conversation I want to have with you, right? Let's park the friendship.
Right.
And I want you to be honest with me. I want you to be direct with me. I want you to tell me as it is, because it's not going to help me if you don't, and push my ideas, etc. Right? And so what I've done over time is, just maintain those relationships and continue just building those friendships and relationships. And then once in a while, reach out to people. So I do think mentorship is great. It's helped me a lot. And it's not just, again, people external, even within my team. The relationship I have with my co-founder and my CTO are two people who I know will tell me straight, are brutally honest with me. And we have that kind of open dialogue, right? They'll tell me if they think I did something wrong, or if I could have done something differently, right? And so I think having those kinds of people in your life is very helpful, right? You're getting the real gist, right?
I'm surprised they still haven't told you to stop supporting Chelsea, but I guess, hopefully over time they'll let you know the truth and tell you about the amazing Manchester United. But
you see, that's the problem. Well, none of them are Manchester United fans, but there are some Arsenal fans. But you see, as Arsenal fans, they can't say anything. So they just
right. So let's talk about Paga. Let's talk about that first year. How was that? What did you guys focus on doing? Did you have this famous line, quote unquote, product market fit? Was that something you felt like you had achieved within the first year? Let's talk about that one.
So when we started Paga, or when I got going on the journey, the first thing that was clear to me was that this is a consumer brand. So actually the first thing I spent money on was the brand, was figuring out a name and the brand. So it was initially Project Paga. We didn't actually intend for the name to be Paga. So I was looking for a name, spent a lot of time looking for a name. And eventually, you know, Chris Bradford one day was like, look, you said you want the name to be short and sweet. You want to be a verb. We've been calling this thing Project Paga. Why don't you just call it Paga? I was like, oh shit, I hadn't even thought about that, right? Like, and so I quickly go to paga.com, and it was some company in Canada selling generators. I was like, oh God. So I went to mypaga.com, it was available, so I bought it. And so that's how we built the brand, right? So we then went into brand building, etc. Then I said, you know, we need to build something that can demonstrate the idea. I mean, you have to remember that 2009, there was no Bitcoin, right? Talking about the cashless world, people looked at me like I was crazy, right? So we built this beautiful BlackBerry app, right? That was a
BlackBerry
demo.
App.
Beautiful.
That's legendary.
App. It never saw the light of day, but it was beautiful to demo to people how Paga works, right? And the idea and the concept. And we made it a fully functional demo. And so we're able to use that to talk to people, to investors, about what we're thinking. And at the same time, we started applying for the license, right? So, you know, I remember, I will never forget going to Abuja with a suitcase of, I think, 10 copies of 200-page document of our license application.
Wow.
Right? Like, and that's all I had with me. That was just all that was in the suitcase, right? Because I was going on a day trip. And then, of course, I had to put everything in the floppy drive as well, or a CD or something like that. And so we got going, applied for the license. We started, you know, looking to build a platform. We're initially going to partner with a company out of India. So we signed the partnership agreement, all this kind of stuff. And then you get to February, and we go to India to have like the big powwow about our requirements and on all of this. And you know, and so this is, you know, started in April 2009. Now we're in February 2010. And coming out of the 3 days in India, we're like, wow, we should just build this platform. And that's where we did a deal with Apposit in Ethiopia to build the platform for us. And so we ended up going on a big sprint between February and September to build the Paga platform and get it working. So by September 2010, we actually had a live working platform, which was awesome. And that's what we've continued to build on. So I think the first year was really just about figuring our way on the product and the platform. And it was not till September that we started even testing it in a closed environment with people. And then in November of that year, we got our approval in principle. And then December, we started actually testing with some people publicly. So the first year was nothing about product market fit, right? The first year was really just getting the product out, getting the product ready. And you have to remember, it took us 3 years to get licensed. From when we applied to when we got the final license, 3 years. And every day we kept working, every day we kept building. And we just kept trying with the audience that we had in building this up.
So it seemed like a consistent iteration process over and over and over again until you got to the state where you guys were pleased and started rolling out to more and more people. Let's talk about Paga specifically now. You guys as a business expanded to multiple countries, some even outside of the African continent. Let's talk about that journey. How did you guys make that decision? Were you looking at mobile money across multiple African markets first? Would love to learn and understand that, because many people often say African tech, there's not much for scaling that needs to be done across the African continent because markets are so different, and Mexico is similar to Nigeria versus Kenya to Nigeria, etc. So how did you guys go about that process, and what was behind the decision to expand to another market outside of the continent?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think before I answer that, let me actually just really take a step back and just, for the audience, briefly describe Paga. Some might not really know. So the way to frame it is, Paga is, we are building Square or PayPal for emerging markets, right? So, you know, the same way you use your Cash App to send money to someone using their username is the way you'll use Paga. So you can download the Paga app, you can send money to someone with their username, their phone number, their email, right? You can request money from people, and we're connected to all the banks. You can send money to the banks, you can receive money from the banks, you can pay bills, do a variety of things. So we think of ourselves, and where our business is positioned is a complement to your bank. right? You can link your bank accounts, your cards, etc. And so that's one segment of what we offer. And then the other thing we offer are to merchants and offer them tools for collecting payments, whether in a physical store or online as well. And then to correct you a little bit, we're not yet operational in other countries.
Okay.
We did announce it and have announced a couple of other countries that we're looking to go into, Mexico and Ethiopia, but we're not yet operational there. So we're only operational in Nigeria right now. We do have teams in Nigeria, Ethiopia, Mexico, and UK, and we're headquartered out of. But the way we're thinking about markets, though, to answer your question, is our ambition is that we want to make it simple for 1 billion people to access and use money. And so in us thinking about that, we think that we're in a regulated business, and we're in a business where we think it makes sense for us to go to large countries where there's problems we're trying to solve. The use of cash, access to finance still exists in a big way. And there are many ways to get to 1 billion, right? There are many ways to get 1 billion users. There are maybe 6 or 7 countries in Africa that we could look at, and that over a few years, you could get to 1 billion population in terms of their growth, etc. We've looked at it and said, look, we would look at Africa and LATAM as our playground, and we're playing the long game here. That's sort of how we're thinking about it. We will go to other African countries as well. We will go to all the other LATAM countries, but that's how we're playing the game. But there's a long road to go in Nigeria, right? Like, make no doubt about it. The team in Nigeria is 100% focused on Nigeria. They do not think about any other country, right? Like, the only people that think about other countries are either someone who's responsible for that country, or myself and my chief of staff, right? And the product team. But like, everyone on the operational side is 100% focused on most of our investments is into Nigeria, because we do believe this is a massive opportunity in Nigeria. And we think that, what we've built with our agent network to reach the mass market in Nigeria is a real strong defensive moat. And so we just continue to build on that.
So just a couple of questions that I'd love to jump into Fintech. Tayo, Fintech seems to garner a lot of Africa's investments. And there's all these stories that pop up. People are like, oh, Fintech is saturated. Fintech is so full across the African continent. There's enough companies building X, Y, or Z. What is your take on that statement? Accurate, incorrect, false? Any thoughts on that one?
I would say incorrect, right? I mean, look, there was a time where people told Patrick Collison of Stripe, what are you doing, right? Like, PayPal already has this, right? Someone already has that. But look at Stripe today. Stripe exists, PayPal exists, Square exists, and there are other gateways, by the way. Those are not the only gateways. Phoenix is new to the game, right? Imagine somebody would have told Phoenix, what are you doing? Last year, Fast launched, right? Fast sounds very much like what Stripe invested in Fast as well, right? I say on one hand, no, right? There is, and even for all of us in the game as well, we have to be conscious of that, right? Because, you also means that competitively, you have to watch your flanks, right? And see what's going on. I don't think it's that it's overheated. I think, though, that there are a lot of Me Too's and a lot of people who are not innovating and are just saying, oh, I have access to APIs. So and it's not about APIs, right? You have access to APIs. Everybody has access to APIs. It's actually one of the things the regulator in Nigeria is trying to shut down a little bit, like who has access to the APIs in the financial, make sure people are regulated. There are a lot of businesses doing things that are regulated, right? Which is unfair to those of us who are regulated, because, there's a huge cost to regulation. I mean, like you just told me, you're in Kampala because of regulation, right? Physically, like you have to be there, right? And you're trying to do something, and there's a huge cost to that. So imagine someone who's just sort of skirting the law, right? And then raising money from Y Combinator or whoever else it may be, right? And so it's kind of frustrating. I don't think that the space is saturated, so to speak, but I do think that there is opportunity beyond the infrastructure layer of fintech. And actually, over the last 2 months, I have spent quite a lot of time talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, because we recently announced opening up all our APIs, right? And we've opened up all our APIs to the tech ecosystem. We're launching another one tomorrow, actually, which I think a lot of companies are really going to go after. And then the next big one we're launching is an open wallet, right? And we are launching the Paga wallet to third parties to use within their application. So what we're saying is, look, and you don't need to recreate wallets. You don't need to recreate a wallet system. And you don't need to worry about the licensing and the regulatory side. We will do that. Leverage it, and let's work together and focus on your innovation. And we are actually eating our own dog food. We're launching a platform next month into alpha that needs a wallet. And it is not, and it's a separate platform from Paga. And it is not using, it's not creating its own wallet, it's using the open wallet, right? And so we will leverage our own dog food and then pitch that out to other people, right? To say, look, this is what you do. Why spend all that money and all the time? And we really believe in partnerships, right? That you know what, let's partner together. In fact, you should also come use our APIs, by the way, and let's talk about business license. So we'll talk about that anyways. But anyways, yeah. So I think there's a lot of room still in fintech. I think there's a lot of room to innovate around fintech and to build and meet the demands of the emerging middle class in Nigeria and across the continent. And I think a lot of countries are far behind Nigeria, right? Nigeria's financial system is actually a fairly sophisticated system. You can send money in the banking system to someone instant real time. I still cannot do that from Bank of America to Chase, right?
Oh my
okay,
gosh,
fine. Maybe I can use Zelle, right? I can use Zelle, but Zelle I can do only $2,000, right? On the Nigerian interbanking system, I can do any amount and it will get to the person instant real time. So don't have all of these sort of issues, right? So our system is actually more sophisticated than the US, frankly. And so I think there's still more to build in terms of the actual use cases that people want. I saw Chijoke was in here earlier, you know, actually I see him here on Clubhouse, you know, they're doing, you know, building a digital bank, right? And they're lending to, you know, to businesses and to individuals, and they're leveraging fintech rails, right? So there's a lot of room for collaboration for different parts of the ecosystem, truly, yeah.
I want to take a turn to looking at you as a founder. Building this stuff is not easy. I'm sure you've received many different letters, whether from central banks or regulation here and there, or you know, different partners, different rules you have to comply by and follow. Going back to the question you mentioned earlier, where you said, what matters to you most and why? It's a famous GSP question. What matters to you as a founder most and why, especially with your work with Paga?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been very clear. I've had this clarity for a while. You know, actually, the way I describe it to people is I'm showing here on the Zoom a teaspoon, right? That, you know, I don't know who made the teaspoon. I've never been able to figure out who the person was that invented the teaspoon, but that person has had tremendous impact on the world, right? And you know, there are now so many different versions of this teaspoon, right? And that's what I want my life to be. That, you know, on my deathbed, I want to say I made a difference, right? And I don't need people to know it's me, but I just want to know myself that I made a difference, that I impacted the lives of people around me. And that's what drives me, that's what motivates me. And I want to build a business that is around 200 years from now. So when I talk about that, I usually bring a bottle of Coke. So in my office, I have 2 bottles of Coke sitting there. And I use Coke as my example because Coke's been around 180 years plus. And in the most remote parts of the world, I once visited Bhutan. It doesn't get more remote than Bhutan. You can get Coke in Bhutan, right? In the Himalayas. My thinking is, why can't Paga be in the most remote parts of Nigeria, the most remote parts of Africa, the most remote parts of Latin America? And why can't we be a company that is around in some shape or form 200 years from now? Whether that is within another larger company or publicly listed, why, you know, but the service exists. And so those are the things that matter to me. And then if I break that down, how do you get there? Culture, company really matter to me. And I pay a lot of attention to that. I want to make sure that Paga is the best place for people to work, that people at Paga have autonomy to do great work. We spend money in training and learning so they can master their skills, and that we're all driven. And that's what we spend our energy on as a leadership team. And I'm really proud and happy that I have a leadership team that believes in that as well, and really driving that as a company. So those are the things that matter to me the most. And I think that's where I get my energy from, actually, when I go into work. Those are the things that energize me. You mentioned some other things that I wouldn't say that absolutely do not energize me and actually drain me. But I really enjoy the people side of things, organizational behavior, like focusing on our team, on what we are doing and looking internally more.
Thanks, Tyler. I love that, and I think that the Coke example, the spoon example, are things that we can all learn from, no matter where we are in our careers. So that's really powerful. Tayo, one question we get asked a lot by many different people is, I have a tech idea, I have something I really love to work on, but I'm not technical. How do
Yeah.
I find a CTO or a co-founder? What tips or advice do you have for these people?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think what I would advise people to do is we're very fortunate that these days there are a lot of tech innovation hubs, right? Most cities have at least one, most big cities. So I would say go there. And it's not even about a tech founder, it may just be a co-founder, frankly, right? Go to these innovation hubs, go to the contests and competitions, get to meet people, pitch your idea to people, and who knows, right? You may find somebody who you meet that wants to be your co-founder, right? I was recently reading what Brian Armstrong of Coinbase said, right? And that's how he found his co-founder. And he spoke to so many people before he found the person. And they did very well together, right? So I think that's what I would advise people to do.
Cool. Awesome. I want to start pulling up some questions here. First question is, we've already seen Silicon Valley X, or like the X of Africa, right? So like, Expensify for Africa, the Skype for Africa, or whatever. What do you think are some of the hot trends in African tech that we aren't or should be paying more attention to for what will be big in the next 2 to 3 years across the continent?
Yeah, I actually think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for B2B businesses that we're not yet tapping. If you take Nigeria as an example, 84% of people are employed by small, medium businesses. 84% of people, right, employed by small, medium businesses.
Wow.
Now, both those people, as well as the large businesses, are not well served on the financial space. Right. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. They're not well served. I actually still think, as advanced as Nigeria's banking system is, I don't think banks do the business of banking, frankly. And I'd be happy to say that to any of the bank MDs, right? I just don't think they do. If they did the business of banking, a lot will not be there, right? Rather than fighting, some telco on USSD fees, right? Tayo needs to buy a car. I can't get a car loan. Give me a car loan, man. Forget about that USSD fee, right?
Right.
So maybe Chijioke will give me a car loan. I should talk to him.
Awesome. Our next question is from Daniel Gray. He's asking, he runs an investment readiness and growth accelerator program for African fintech companies. What's the most valuable thing we can offer African fintech founders?
Yeah, I don't think it's actually specific to fintech founders. But I think in general, one thing that is that regardless of where you are in the world, people are the same fundamentally. So helping founders understand people, how to manage teams, how to pitch their business, sales, things like that are generalizable across board. And I would say providing that kind of help is really, really good. Then there may be specific kind of expert kind of help, right? Where somebody needs to know, you need someone to help scale your database. And we've had to seek that from New York, right? From an expert firm to help us, because you know what? This database is now massive. We have terabytes of data, right? So how do we make sure that we're not bogged down? So there may be moments where you need those kind of expert kind of advice. So opening up expert networks is also very valuable, right? And I think I've seen where a lot of people in Silicon Valley or other parts of the world are willing to give up their time to provide that kind of 1 hour, 2 hours here and there and help company with a specific technical issue that they may have as well.
Cool. Thanks, Tayo. The next question over here we have is somebody's asking about open APIs. How can somebody access the Paga open APIs that you've mentioned on the call?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Please just go to paga.dev, DEV, and all our APIs are there. If you have any questions, you can email us at business@mypaga.com, and our team will be very happy to answer. But all our APIs and documentation are online.
Awesome. The next question here is, if you could reimagine ACH across Africa, what would the payment rails look like? Can P2P payments ever be wallet agnostic someday? What could a role of crypto or blockchain play between creating this or making this a reality? That question is from Guerra.
That's a really good question. I definitely think crypto and blockchain will play a role. It's not even can they play a role, they will play a role. Frankly, whether central banks allow it or not, they will. It's the bottom line. And I think the sooner central banks get to start thinking in that direction, the better. China, as you all know, probably are in, I think, the third city now where they're testing the digital yuan, and it's going to go across China soon. The US is already in process on that. I'm actually advising on the digital dollar project. So it's going to happen. But if I could reimagine ACH, wow, this is cool. I think, the reality is I would build it on a blockchain, and it doesn't necessarily have to be crypto actually for it, but I'll build it on a blockchain for certainty of transaction. And what I would do is create a settlement system between the various banks around the continent and financial institutions around the continent, because I do think you still need that intermediation with it. You could say, look, make it all Bitcoin or some currency like that. I actually don't think that's how currency is going to be. I think what's going to happen is that each country is going to have their own digital currency that is crypto-based, that they mine. They're not going to let other people mine their own currency. They're going to mine their own currency, and they're going to create their own digital currency. And licensed institutions will be able to receive that currency, and there will be a trading exchange between countries with that crypto, the same way we do with fiat today. So I think the first step is that all those things would first happen that way. I don't think there's going to be one, at least not yet, one global currency. I think maybe one day in the future. I actually don't think in our lifetime, but one day in the future. And actually, I think the ADB has hired someone who used to run one of the business units at InterSwitch in Nigeria here to come and help think about this future, Mike Obalu. And I think he's going to be a great person to help, sort of lay out that vision of where we go. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So actually, real quick on that one, this is not investing advice here, but are you buying crypto? Are we buying Bitcoin? Are we buying ETH? Or if you don't want to answer that question, that's
no. I'm very open about this. I am long crypto. I see it right now for myself as an asset, the way I think of my stock asset. So other private investments in startups. So that's actually where the next big bucket of my wealth is in other startups and other people. And then I have some investment in stock, and both from a holding crypto, but as well supporting, trying in some way or the other, supporting others who are, doing stuff in crypto. And I see Paga doing something crypto soon, right? We can't do it in Nigeria because of the regulations, but, we'll do it in other countries, and we'll obey the regulator in Nigeria, right? We won't do it in Nigeria until they allow us.
For sure. We saw the circulars being passed around a couple of months ago. We have a question here from Najava Matambo. If you're raising your angel round now, what would you do differently?
Oh, I think I think I would have gone to Y Combinator, right? That's the first thing I would have done differently. I'd have gone to Y Combinator. I didn't even think about it back then. The other thing I would have done differently actually is pass the hat around to my friends more. Quite a bit of my business school friends have given me a hard time for not telling them. And now knowing what I know, I believe so much more in making money with friends. Back then, I was more worried that, God, I don't want to take money from my friend. Like, I know that money means a lot to them. And indeed, one of my friends, when he invested $5,000 in Paga, I cried. I literally cried because I know that $5,000 was worth a lot more to him, people who had given me $500,000. But I would have done more of that. I would have been bolder about doing that and making sure that my friends do well from Paga as well. And if I start another business, my friends would be the first people I would try to come and join.
Wow. I think that's a powerful lesson for all of us, because so often we usually ask our friends for wedding donations and for funeral donations, but for our own businesses, it's like, no, it's kind of weird. But it's time for like a lot of us to change that narrative.
Completely, right? You have to do right by them as well, right? And treat it professionally, right? Because, it is a repeated game as well.
Last audience question before we wrap up over here is from Winnie. Winnie, she's from London. Tayo, Benji, thank you for the insightful session. She'd love to know, how did your MBA or your previous experience help with your journey?
That's a really good question. Look, I think my MBA has significantly helped me in a lot of ways. One of the things that I didn't expect to get out of my MBA was really learning about myself, my own leadership, how I impact other people. I think bringing that to work every day has really helped me. I think it has helped me. The class I think I've applied the most from Stanford Business School is Managing Growing Enterprises, which is a class where every session you get a vignette of a specific situation. And it's not about, oh, what would you do? It's do it, right? And that's my life, right? At Paga, it's really helped me build a muscle around that. And then the other way it's really helped is, if I look at my cap table at Paga, I have about 34 angel investors, and I think about 12 or 13 of them are Stanford Business School alums from 5 different years, right? So it's not a who I went to school with, right? But and then some of my biggest investors have been introduced to me by other Stanford Business School alums. So to me, that's just immense benefit that Stanford has brought me that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have that experience. So if you do a general MBA, you get really good understanding on marketing, finance, operations, sales, etc. All these things that will give you more confidence in running your own business. But there's nothing like experience from working. There is nothing like experience from working. I think the experience as a consultant, learning to pitch, learning to sit in front of people and pitch an idea and not win the deal and have multiple questions come back to you, having to work late night to get something done and then wake up at 8 a.m. to pitch it. All of those things, working in teams, etc., really have helped me in being able to lead people today and manage my time efficiently, right? As well. So I think there's nothing like experience. I think there's a reason why the most successful entrepreneurs start their business in the late 40s. I didn't, right?
Ty, we're almost at the end here. So final quick fire round. I'm going to wrap up here. Quick fire round. First, really important question: Nigerian jollof or Ghanaian jollof?
Without a doubt, Nigerian jollof. Come on, without a doubt.
I had to just check because some people tell us otherwise. So we asked this question to all our speakers. Founder in the world you admired the most?
Oh, Jeff Bezos, by far.
Favorite African female music artist?
Favorite African female music artist? Oh, Somi, without a doubt. Love her. She's amazing.
Nice. And favorite African male music artist?
Oh, I'm a big Davido fan, right? I like Davido. Yeah.
He picked David over Wizkid. That debate's over right there. Final football question. I know you're a big football fan. Messi or Ronaldo?
Oh, man. I got to say my view on this has changed over the years, man. I got to go with Ronaldo. My view has changed over the years. I used to say Messi, but I tell you what, I have seen him play now, I think 3 times or maybe 4 times, and both for club and country. And maybe it's just my luck with him, but they've all been poor performances. So, I'm like, I got to say Ronaldo. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Tayo, thank you so much for tuning in and being with us here today and sharing your story and your journey. It's extremely inspiring. This is actually the longest time I've ever spoken to Tayo, ladies and gentlemen. That's so great. it's a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. For those who've tuned into Clubhouse, thank you so much for tuning in as well. Tayo, do you have any last words of advice for anybody who might be listening in before we close off?
No, I just want to say thank you for enjoy the conversation, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in. I really love the concept of what you're doing about let's build our own Africa, right? There's a lot of work to do. We all should do it. We shouldn't depend on the government. We shouldn't depend on anyone. We should do it in spite of government. And as hard as that is sometimes, I think we should just stay heads down. Whatever area it is that you can contribute, do it, right? And I think there's a Steve Jobs quote that I really like that says that in the world, if you just pick one thing that is your thing that you're going to do, and just do that one thing, don't think of the big problems, and you do your one part, impact that, that the few people around you in your sphere. That's it. We'll leave the world a better place. So let's build our own Africa, man. I love it.
Hey, I couldn't have ended That better. Tayo, thank you so much. For those of you who just tuned in for the first time on this session, this is the Build Our Africa Speaker Series. For anybody who's been following us at NALA, thank you so much for all of those who've signed up for early access and beta. Please continue to sign up, especially if you send money from the UK to Kenya or the UK to Uganda. We'd love to get your feedback. It really helps us build our product. And as Ty mentioned, because we're essentially trying to reduce these costs to people sending money home, and without your feedback, it makes it hard to do that. So really appreciate everybody who signed up and joined us in this journey as well.
Benji, let's turn on UK to Nigeria. Let's do it.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the first exclusive right here, UK to Nigeria coming soon. Focusing on East Africa, but we're opening up West Africa soon. So Ty, I'm excited to be working with you guys on that one.
Cool. All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Take care. Thank you.